So we'll probably have a couple more people join. It's just gone 9:30, and this is the second in our webinar series, Winning Trust with Words. And today we're going to talk about reputation management and credibility management by using SEO. Here's just a kind of brief of what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the last decade in SEO and how much has changed and what's changed. And then we're going to talk about why SEO is so important and quite often neglected by B2B businesses. We're then going to look at the principles of EAT, which is fundamentally the quality guidelines behind content on the web. And then we're going to have a look at Deloitte and PwC and their dominance and how they've achieved that dominance. And then we're going to look at how you as a business can also achieve success in the results pages. And we're going to talk about reputation management. And at that point, I'm then going to hand over to Helen, who's going to talk about measuring effectiveness. And then we'll just have a bit of time for questions at the end. So just to introduce myself, I'm Laura. I've worked for Stratton Craig since 2020 as a consultant. I then came on full-time in January of this year as the head of digital. I'm a Google qualified data analyst, and I've worked in digital marketing and SEO for 11 years this year, so it's been quite a while now. I've done a lot of teaching, so I've taught at quite a few universities in the south of the UK and the southwest, and most recently that was at UCA Farnham as a guest lecturer on their marketing degree. I'm also a thought leader and writer in the SEO space, and I write a lot about different technical SEO subjects and content SEO subjects. And yeah, I'm pretty much live and breathe SEO. I'll just hand over to Helen.
Thanks, Laura. So I'm Helen. I'm account director at Stratton Craig. I joined Stratton Craig last year, so I've been at the company now for around 6 months. But I've been working in marketing and communications agencies now for more than 8 years, typically working across the financial services, energy, and technology sectors, and generally just overseeing content management as well as developing strategies to help shape future ideas and execution.
Thank you, Helen. So let's just talk about SEO for the last 10 years. When I first started in SEO, it was a completely different beast to what it is now. It's really, really changed. One of the things that's become a really, really good positive change in SEO is the content quality. So when I first started in SEO, it was a real problem. And as a sort of sector and industry, we had a really bad reputation because it was actually quite easy to manipulate Google. And the way that you did that was by paying for backlinks, which were a huge part of the algorithm. A backlink was there to kind of recognize your brand as having a sort of mention from another brand. But actually, people then just created these ginormous link schemes and ended up just buying them and manipulating and getting to pay like position 1 without actually really deserving that position. And the other thing that people used to do was keyword stuff. So they would just literally say the same keyword, financial services, financial services, financial services over and over again. And what that led to was really low quality content. And over the last 10 years, Google's taken massive strides to really up the content quality. And the way that they do this is with quality raters, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and not rewarding backlinks as highly, and actually genuinely penalising and punishing people that keyword stuff. So that's one of the things that's just been a really positive change in SEO in the last 10 years, is that now when you're searching for things, the things that are being brought back in the results page are much higher quality. There's also very much a mobile first mentality, and that was actually written into the algorithm a couple of years ago now, along with some other things like security protocols and site speed. So the mobile first mentality is like you can actually get different rankings on desktop to mobile. Based on if your mobile performance doesn't perform as well as your desktop, for example, if it's not as speedy, you might find that you don't rank as well on mobile. If your mobile's not responsive, if your mobile site isn't responsive to the different browsers, then you can also find that you don't rank as well. And in terms of understanding user intent, search engines have really gotten so much smarter at deciphering the why behind a query. So SEO now focuses on content that aligns perfectly with a user's intent. So when you search for, I don't know, like wealth management London, the content that will be brought back to you is very different from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you'd have been given a list of whoever had stuffed the most wealth management London keywords in there. But now you'll be offered a map pack and a local pack listing. You might be offered a featured snippet, which again, we'll talk about later. And then you'll be offered the list underneath all of that. Not to mention as well, it's obviously a lot more busy with ads than it was 10 years ago. So it's very, very competitive landscape. So in today's digital landscape, B2B businesses can't afford to neglect SEO. And a lot of times they do, and a lot of times they still rely on more traditional marketing techniques of referral and word of mouth. But actually, first impressions do matter. So when somebody searches for your brand in Google, the very first thing that they see of your brand is going to really matter to them. And if you're not well optimized, and worse, because I have worked with companies that have this, if you're not actually visible for your own brand name, that's going to cause real trust issues with your potential customers. If you want to drive further brand awareness and scale to outside of local to national and then eventually to global levels, you can't rely on the traditional marketing methods of referral and word of mouth and networking, because actually once you get to a global level like Deloitte and PwC, it's not enough to simply rely on your network. In terms of thought leadership positioning as well, it's hugely important for SEO. And we're going to talk about a case study in a bit with Deloitte and PwC, where actually for so many different searches, if you search them within the B2B space, they're really, really dominant and they will always appear there. And it's the same for the BBC if you're looking for news, or if you're looking for any kind of medical condition, it's always the NHS website that comes up. And that's because these players have managed to really dominate their space as thought leadership pioneers within their different areas. And just finally, because everybody is online, everybody has a website, all businesses have websites now. If somebody's doing their due diligence about your business, they're going to come online to see. I just want to talk about this rich snippet. So this is for the search term ESG. So ESG, a lot of you here today will be aware of what ESG is, and this is a really simple search, but you can see really physically now how different the results page is. There's no room for more than one business within this results page. On the right, you've got the Wikipedia knowledge panel, and Wikipedia 9 times out of 10 always get the knowledge panel based on how they're built. And then you've got the people also asked boxes beneath, which actually offer really valuable data and information about related searches to the search that you've just performed. And then you've got the featured snippet at the top that comes with images, it comes with a headline, and it's really big and it takes up a lot of real estate, and there's no room for anyone else there. This is actually the screen grab of a desktop on laptop. So you can see just how competitive these spaces are. So EAT stands for expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, and it's really crucial in B2B SEO, and we're just going to find out why. So Google's quality raters prioritize high EAT websites. What that basically means is your website will be prioritized and perform better if it's got really high quality content. And we're going to talk about Google's quality raters in a minute, but it's an ongoing process that Google has a look at websites. It has quality raters that are all over the world. And the information that they provide back to Google, they use to tweak the algorithm. And eventually over time, the higher the quality of your website content, the more and better performance that you'll get. Expertise builds trust within your sector. So demonstrating your expertise through well-researched content and qualified authors positions your brands as reliable. So what that basically means is people want to see that when they're investing with you as a potential business partnership, They need to know that you have the expertise to deliver on the promises that you put out on your website. And authoritative matters. Earning backlinks is still a huge part of the algorithm, and you need to earn those backlinks organically. So it really, really matters that other people want to give you brand mentions and link back to your website, and that you get third-party offsite mentions from other businesses, because that shows that you're being recognised within your industry as legitimate. So here's a breakdown of what EAT is. It's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. It basically signals that you have a really good quality website with really good quality content. Experience comes from creators with first-hand knowledge and practical experience in your subject matter. That could be a lawyer writing about a legal case that he worked on, and you know that that person has that first-hand experience, that they've actually got real world experience, and it's not enough now to just have knowledge of a topic. You actually have to show that you've experienced it too. Expertise is where the author demonstrates a really deep understanding of the topic. That could be using field-specific lexis and terminology that's specific to the niche that they're writing about through proven and well-researched content. Authoritativeness, again, reputable sources giving you recognition as a leader in your field and in your within your niche. And then trustworthiness is the overall credibility and reliability of your website. So that's showing users that you have industry accolades or reviews, or any kind of trust signals that you can pop on the website to show users that you're legitimate. So what exactly is EAT? There's a 170-page document, which unfortunately for me, I have actually read, that is the Google Quality Rater Guidelines. We're going to follow up with a link and some links to some different resources for you all by email after this event. And I will include that for you should you want to be a masochist like me and actually read the 170-page Quality Rater Guidelines. But people do read them, and there are employed quality raters all over the globe, and they go onto websites. And if you've got website tracking, sometimes you can actually see them on your website, depending on what tools you're using. And they will come onto your website and they will evaluate your internal link schemes and your navigation, your local signals, absolutely everything within your content. And then they'll use that information to feed back to Google, and the algorithm is then tweaked accordingly. So there's a minimum of 4 of those tweaks a year. They're called broad core updates, and they always affect content. I've seen some businesses in medtech and financial services hit really hard and devastatingly by those broad core updates, because they've not been, they're businesses that sort of build their website and then leave it very static and don't keep on top of it and don't maintain it. And that just doesn't work, because SEO is constantly changing and constantly moving, not just over 10 years, but even within the space of 18 months, it's really different. And then on top of those 4 broad core updates, you also get additional updates as well. So it really doesn't pay to kind of sit back and let your website do nothing. So we're just going to talk about Deloitte and PwC now. So Deloitte and PwC have been really dominant in the SEO space for the last few years. I've certainly been aware of them being almost untouchable for the last 5 years. And that's due to the 3 things. So it's reputation, scale, and network. So with it here, we've done legal management consulting, and you can see Deloitte have actually secured 2 different results, and that's actually, they look really similar, but they are 2 different websites. So you've got www.deloitte.com and you've got www.deloitte.com, which is actually a subdomain of the top domain. And they're so dominant for this search term that they actually have taken up almost the entirety of the top of the SERP. And again, for PwC, you can see that they are above and below the people also asked box. So you can see just how dominant they are for this search, which is business restructuring services. So in a minute, we're going to talk about if you're not a business that has 455,000 people spread across 150 odd countries, how you can compete in the results pages. But I just wanted to talk a little bit why big brands like Deloitte and PwC consistently rank high in Google searches. It's a powerful combination of factors. So firstly, their established reputations and industry expertise obviously translate into authoritative backlinks from credible sources. That kind of happens very naturally. But secondly, they likely dictate quite a significant amount of resource to SEO. So when you go on their website, you can see that they've taken real pain to craft informative content that positions them as the thought leaders within their industry. They very much self-reference as the go-to resource for their niches. And finally, they're large scale. So because they're so large, they have ongoing content creation that ensures they remain fully relevant and top of mind for searchers. And that continual process of content creation also gives signals to Google that there's fresh content on their website, that things are happening on their website. It encourages Google to come back and crawl the website and look at the website and re-index the website in this continual process. A lot of businesses, a lot of B2B businesses, especially small to medium enterprises, don't necessarily have that resource to be continually creating content. It's a very laboursome process. So if you're not at the size of PwC or Deloitte yet, how do we achieve this? So focus on your niche expertise. Long tail keywords can sometimes be much less competitive than a short tail keyword. And by long and short tail, what we're talking about is the ESG search that I referenced earlier and showed you in the results page. That's a short tail keyword. It's literally 1 or 2 words. Long tail keywords tend to be more like a sentence and be made up by a number of parameters. So if I give you an e-commerce example, a short tail would be trainers and a long tail would be women's size 7 red trainers, and it has several parameters that are requirements within that search. And long tail keywords tend to be much less competitive, and especially for very niche brands. And actually in the short term, whilst you're initially building your credibility, it can be easier to just go for the long tail keywords that aren't as dominant. And then as a long-term goal, work your way up to the really high volume, high competition, short tail keywords. So become a local expert. And what we mean here is everybody wants to become global at some point, but actually it can be much easier in the interim to establish yourself as a local authority. So establishing yourself in the local pack listing, which I'll show you an example of slightly later on. Establishing yourself for local keywords, whether that's Bristol or London. So like I've worked with a lot of scaling wealth management and finance businesses that have started off as Financial Services London, and then they scale to a national level and then finally to a global level. And actually that process helps to snowball the website's authority and credibility as it goes. Having a content marketing strategy is really, really important. And this is one of the biggest, most fundamental mistakes that I see B2B businesses make. Quite often the investment in marketing is quite low, and the investment in the content strategy is even lower. And so many businesses, especially early in my career that I worked with, would kind of kick out a blog post. Not a lot of thought had really gone into it. And it was there primarily just to make sure that they were doing the tick boxes of SEO, that is getting fresh content on the website. But actually, Google demands so much more of content now. It demands really high quality targeted content. It wants you to answer the user's query. It wants you to format it in a way that is easily scannable and digestible for the user. And creating varied content as well. So again, another mistake I see B2B businesses make is just publishing blog posts, when actually case studies can be really invaluable. If you've got somebody that's at the point where they're almost ready to make a purchase decision, A case study is the thing that's going to keep them on the website and keep them engaged with you as a business, and keep them looking at your website and looking for those signals that you are credible and trustworthy. White papers, again, are just an amazing way to establish yourself as a thought leader, because you have the resource and the knowledge and the credibility to publish a white paper. And then just consistency. It's about having a content strategy that lays out in a really defined manner, that you are going to regularly commit to posting and updating and refining and going back in and changing old content and making sure that your website is always up to date and relevant. Technical SEO optimization is my favorite subject, and I'm very evangelical about it. I have worked with brands that had websites that weren't available in Google at all. And that was because they had a piece of code that was left over from development that hadn't been removed upon deployment of the website. And because they didn't remove that code upon deployment of the website, it was basically a piece of code that said to Google, don't look at me, I'm not ready to be indexed yet, I'm still being developed. And therefore, and probably had about 4 or 5 businesses that this was the case for, that they just weren't available in Google at all, and they didn't know. And they were looking at Google Analytics and saying, why aren't we getting any organic traffic? Why is it all referral or direct? And actually, yeah, the due diligence was just not there to look at the technical SEO optimization. Technical SEO is the fundamental basis by which you can actually platform and display your content. So it's really important. Speed and mobile friendliness now is actually written into the algorithm. So it's not enough to just have your website. It has to perform really well. It has to have good UX, user experience. And then there's on-page and off-page optimization. So another mistake I see businesses make, especially if they have in-house SEO resource, is that they go to real painstaking lengths to do all the on-page SEO optimization, whether that's meta titles, brand suffixes, open graph data, schema in the head of web pages, internal links, headers, all these things. They do all this, and then they neglect the off-site signals. So they neglect their socials, they neglect to put up a Google My Business page. They neglect to earn backlinks and to do outreach and work with other businesses to get backlinks, and you're only then sort of fulfilling half of the puzzle. And technical audits. So a lot of people think that once the tech is in place, it's fine, they can just leave it, but that's actually not the case. Web pages break and you get 404s, and Google absolutely hates them, and they can actually really harm your crawl budget. Loads of things happen over time. 10 years ago, schema wasn't really a thing. Now it's a huge thing. So if your website was built 10 years ago, it won't have schema, or it will have outdated modes of schema. And yeah, it's really important to just keep on top of technical all the time. I recommend quarterly. And leverage your advantages as a small business. So relatively smaller businesses and small to medium enterprises, they can be much more nimble in terms of adapting their SEO strategies. For example, you might see that there's been a surge of searches for wealth management, and a larger business will have a lot more red tape and a lot more sign-off processes to go through. And in the interim, you can be filling in the places in Google where they haven't been able to adapt and respond quick enough. And be customer focused. One of the problems with global businesses, especially online, is that they lose that localization and they lose that touch point with their local audiences. And actually, we as a brand, Stratton Craig, get a lot of global enterprises coming to us saying, our real concern is that we make sure that we have these touch points with the regions that we're working in, but we're struggling to do that at scale. So actually, that's a real benefit and can be a real help in converting audiences. Just some additional tips as well. Social media does have an impact on SEO, especially if you're really regular on it. It shows that you're active off the website as well as on the website. And it's also just a really good place to engage with your potential audiences and your potential customers. Use analytics tools to track and modify what you're doing. A lot of them are free. Google Analytics, that Helen's going to really kindly talk about for us in a minute, is amazing. And also Google Search Console, which will tell you the keywords that have brought people to your website, as well as other things, what pages they're coming to, what countries they've come from. Is really, really powerful. And actually, if you can see that, oh, as a business, we thought we were doing a lot in the wealth management space, but it seems a lot of people are actually coming to us through independent financial advisor or something similar, then you can adapt your markup and your content accordingly. And then just stay updated on the algorithm changes. So we know that it's sort of quarterly that we get a broad core algorithm update. As an SEO, one of the main fundamental things that I do is every time there's been one, I do benchmarking before and after of that data. And that's why it's really important to use data tools like analytics so that you can see if you've been impacted by an update. People often ask me, what's the #1 best way to perform well for SEO? And what's the trick? What's the one thing that you would do? There isn't a single one thing that you should do. The algorithm, the current iteration of the algorithm, there's over 300 different variables and they all have different weightings. And there isn't really, if you just did one thing, you would neglect the other 299 plus things. So there's not one way to do it. If I was absolutely forced into a corner and had to say the one thing that I would focus most on, it's content strategy, and having a really good, clear, concise content strategy is ultimately, search engines are query machines and you need to be putting content in front of your users. So in the B2B world, reputation is absolutely crucial for success. You can guarantee that if some bad press comes out about your business, that's going to be really sticky in Google. And actually, brands can use SEO to leverage their good reputation and highlight and show users that are doing due diligence on their brands what things they're doing well. So that can be things like reviews, only if it's obviously relevant to your business. But it can also be things like publishing ESG reports and talking about charitable work that you do or work in the community, awards and industry accolades, anything like that, anything that reassures the user that you're legitimate. And even just back to social media, responding to negativity on social media or responding to negative reviews shows that you as a business are engaging with all audiences, not just the ones that have had positive brand experiences with you. So how do you start building your SEO reputation? So we're going to just talk about how we go through this process. Longevity and background is a huge thing, and it can still be leveraged even if you're a new business, and we're going to talk through that. How your brand is presented in the results pages, your brand positioning as a thought leader and industry expert, and then answering the question. So your longevity or background, you'll probably all have noticed that most businesses have an about page or a team page that focuses on the individuals and their expertise that work within those businesses. Businesses who have longevity and websites as well that have longevity and have been around for a while, that is a ranking factor. It is still really possible with a new business and a new domain to use longevity and background, and that's through talking about your individuals and your expertise and your knowledge of the sector, and creating content not just around team members but around the business's credentials within those sectors and niches. So it's absolutely possible to use longevity and background even with a brand new domain. Your brand's presentation. So the way that your brand presents in Google when somebody does due diligence and does a Google search for you is hugely important. You need to claim and optimize online listings. If you don't claim them, you haven't got power over what they say. You need to deliver exceptional client service so that people are motivated to talk positively on you, talk positively about you online, or leave reviews. You need to engage with negative and positive audience created content, whether that's reviews or socials. Becoming an industry thought leader, again, is about regularly publishing content that's really relevant to your audiences, formatted in a way that is scannable by search engines and by users, and formatted in a way that puts you in a position to get a featured snippet or one of the top positions, position 1, 2, or 3. Becoming active on social media, again, it's not just about SEO or engaging with your audiences. It's an actual off-site reference that links back. So most brands' websites will have their social media linked via a backlink, and that link sends signals to Google. Encouraging customer advocacy is hugely important. And the reason why it's hugely important is because retention and customer retention is usually hugely important for most businesses. So by creating advocates out of your customers, especially if you're a smaller business, a smaller B2B business, you can actually encourage referral and networking and word of mouth on top of building your online presence. So we're going to talk about rich snippets in a bit more detail, and I'm going to show you some more rich snippets in a minute. But just before we look at some rich snippets in more detail, I just want to talk about what rich snippets are and what the benefits are. So rich snippets are the things in Google that are always at the top, usually below the ads, if ads are present. And they are the featured snippets and the knowledge panels and the people also ask boxes that we looked at on the ESG slide earlier. And they get loads of benefits. We're going to talk about the benefits in a minute. But they really are just a way to, when users see them, they see that you're in that position. They understand that Google has rewarded you with that position. And actually, that just really increases the user trust in you as an authority. So one of those first benefits is increased visibility. Rich snippets take up so much more space than standard text snippets. We saw images earlier, we saw headlines, and they can come in loads of different formats, bullet pointed, but they usually lead to much higher click-through rates, and higher click-through rates translates to better organic traffic for your website and eventually conversions. They really improve the user experience. So rich snippets are usually formatted in a way that directly answers the user's query. A user queries something in the results page, and quite often there's a lot of information then for them to trawl through and to try and get the answer to their query. Rich snippets are really, really good at answering those queries directly and then encouraging the user to click through to the website to find out more. And they really boost credibility. Again, it's about that reputation management and positioning yourself as a thought leader. But again, people just really recognize that you've been rewarded with something special in the Google results page. The way that you can get rich snippets, it's very much about formatting. It's very much also about schema, which is a code. In the follow-up to this, I'm going to be sending around, again, some different resources that I spoke about, and schema is one of them. It's actually relatively easy to implement on a website and can be really a significant boost in terms of ranking potential. It's a code that lives in the head of a web page, and it basically gives Google all the information about what that page is going to be about up front. So it's a real boost, but you can achieve rich snippets without schema. And I think that's one of the most important things to stress, is that a lot of businesses do achieve them purely by formatting and the quality of the content that they have. So you don't necessarily have to go to the lengths of having a developer implement schema for you. And targeted traffic. So purely by design, depending on the type of rich snippet that you've got, you can attract better qualified leads, for example, with a product rich snippet with the ratings and reviews that are attached to it. You can be attracting users that are closer to the buying stage. From a B2B context, if you get a rich snippet that is to do with one of your services, you know that that user has been searching for your service, whether that's financial management or ESG or legal or tech. You know that the user has actually been searching for the service that you offer. And they also indirectly provide a potential ranking boost. So whilst rich snippets and featured snippets don't actually directly impact your rankings, they send positive signals to search engines about the relevance and value of your website. And when people click through onto your website and they have a positive experience and they engage with the website and they stay on the website for longer and they click through to more pages, those metrics, those soft engagement metrics, do directly affect your ranking. And finally, just answer the question. Answering the question is so important. And in the rich snippets that we look at in a moment, you will see that people have formatted their content in a question and answer style. And that is because search engines are query machines. You pop a query in and it gives you the information back. So this is a type of rich snippet, and as you can see, it's absolutely massive. This is called a table snippet. If we've searched best management companies, the way that this has been presented pushes everybody else, even the people also ask boxes, off of page one. It's really easy for the user to understand and digest and look at, and they've done that by formatting their content as a table within this web page. This is for risk management, and it's really similar to what we saw for ESG. So on the right, you've got the Wikipedia listing. At the top, you've got a listing from IBM. It includes images, you've got the highlighted text, you've got the brand name, and then you've got the people also ask boxes underneath. And then finally, this is another type of rich snippet, which is the local pack listing. So this is for wealth management companies. And actually, you can see what is called aggregate rating data, which is just a really fancy way of saying star ratings. But SEOs like to make things more complicated and call it something extra fancy. So you've got the star ratings underneath. That's really good for the users. They can see that, for example, Milne Wealth Management Limited has got 5 out of 5 star ratings. We can see that it's open. We can see that they offer online appointments, and they've been rewarded with the first in that business's listing. I'm going to hand over to Helen now.
Thanks, Laura. So on the next few slides, I'm just going to be looking at measuring effectiveness. So it's really important to measure the success of your campaigns, and the best and free way to do that is through Google tools such as GA4, Google Search Console, and Page Speed Insights. And these platforms can be pretty daunting if you haven't used them before. So over the next few slides, we've provided a snapshot of the best metrics for you to look at in order to analyse the effectiveness of SEO. You can just go on to the next slide. So first one is traffic. So it's really important to see exactly where your traffic's coming from. And in order to measure the success of SEO, you should be looking at the organic traffic channel on the GA platform. So you can see in the screen grab on the right there, I've just pulled out a little key line over where the organic traffic shows on the GA4 platform for us. And to see what your traffic is, you will need to go onto your GA4 platform. On the left, you click on the life cycle, you then click acquisition, and then you'd click on traffic acquisition. And so what you can see from the screenshot on the right is I've taken a look at the Stratton Craig website, and I've compared the month of March 2024 to March 2023. So I've done a year-on-year comparison, but you can do any kind of comparison you want to. You could do month-on-month data instead of year-on-year. You could do day by day, or you could have no comparison at all. And And then you can also get more granular information on the specific keywords that have been used to land on your website. And to do that, you need to go onto the Google Search Console platform. Page speed is another really important one to use to measure the effectiveness of SEO. So from an SEO standpoint, having a fast page speed is really important. But there's many different factors that can affect the page load speed, such as your web hosting and your page size. And also page speed differs across both desktop and mobile versions of a page. So there's a Google platform called Page Speed Insights, and this just reports on the user experience for both mobile and desktop devices. And then it will also provide suggestions on how that page can be improved. So you can see again on the screenshot on the right, I've just taken a screen grab from one of our pages, and it's provided a summary of how it's performing there. And then finally, engagement metrics. So engagement is the amount of time a user's behavior, amount of time of a user's browser is in focus on a web page. So it allows you to see how long a user has actively been engaging with content. And you can also see which channels generate the most engaged website users. So the more time that a user spends on your site, the more likely that they will find value in the content. And that's a really good indicator of credibility, and therefore helps increase search engine results page rankings over time. And then finally, looking at how you can personalize your metrics. So I find if you're not used to using Google Analytics as a platform, it can be really daunting, particularly if you're also not used to reviewing data. But they do have a really useful tool that I've been using over the last few years, and that we use at Stratton Craig. It used to be called Data Studio. It's now called Looker Studio. And this offers you the opportunity to create your own personalized dashboard, and you can pull together the most useful information for your company into one dashboard. But also it will allow you to update the data in real time, and customize it with any other metric that might become important to you later on down the line. It pulls through data from GA4, but it will also allow you to pull in data from Google Search Console, as well as plug in data from third-party platforms outside of Google. So if you're running campaigns through MailChimp, for example, or if you've got the SEMrush platform. So at Stratton Craig, we've got the experience to be able to build these bespoke reporting platforms for you. So we can either create them and then hand them over to you, or we can create them and then provide regular reporting analysis on the platforms for you. And what I've included on the right of this page is just a screenshot of a customized Looker Studio report. But as I mentioned, you can pretty much pull in any data that you want to analyze and build your own personalized dashboard. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Thanks so much for listening. We just want to open it up now for any questions that people might have for us to answer.
We got any questions in the Q&A box, Helen?
Yeah, I think if let me just.
Okay, so we've got one here about the rich snippets. So exactly how do you get the rich snippets? So again, it's a combination of technical and content, although businesses do and have achieved them without doing the technical side. The technical side just speeds up the process. So the technical side would be adding the schema code that I mentioned earlier, and the content side would very much be about formatting. So the question and answer formatting is always really good for getting you in a people also ask box. And you'll have seen from the examples that we showed earlier as well of the different businesses is that they very much position it as a statement or a question, like how, what, why, where, or when. And then the content that they follow up with immediately afterwards directly answers that question. And that's very much the simple and best way of getting a rich snippet. And then we've got, why can desktop and mobile users see different results in the results page? And that's a combination of things. So it might just be down to the browser, like the actual screen size. So when you look at a result on mobile, for example, one result can pretty much dominate the entire screen on certain mobile sizes, whereas on a desktop there's a little bit more real estate. But it's also because you may be rewarded with a certain ranking on desktop because your website from a site speed perspective performs well on desktop, but if it doesn't perform well on mobile, and if it's not responsive, you may not get the same ranking on mobile. So just because you get given the ranking on the desktop, it doesn't guarantee that you'll get the same ranking on mobile. And then we've got one, how regularly should you update old content? And I really just can't stress enough, is all the time, as much as your resource and capacity will allow you to do it. I work with a lot of big businesses that have content on their websites that's been sat stagnant for 10 years, not updated, and becomes irrelevant. And not only does that become irrelevant to users, but actually Google can see there's a code in the website and in the sitemaps. Every time you update a page, Google knows when you've updated it and when you haven't. So Google can actually see when you haven't updated old content. We've got a couple more. So we've got, how important is SEO for a firm that's main purpose is not to generate leads, but more informational? It's probably more important, if not equally important. So if your main purpose is to be informational and to give out information, from a brand perspective, when people search your brand, if they already are brand aware and they need to come across your website, they obviously need to be able to find you, and you need to be able to be visible for brand. But also you can increase those audiences through rich snippets, featured snippets, and just regular Google results as well. So like the web is informational in its purpose primarily, and that was what it was created to be very originally. And finally, we've got PwC uses employee advocacy across social media along with network and scale. Would this be a top contributor to their SEO? So it would definitely be a contributor. If I was to pinpoint one thing with PwC and Deloitte, the one thing that I would say about them is that they have a suite of individual websites and subdomains and subdirectories that all point at each other, and they're all backing each other up. And they are truly global in scale. And that's not just in terms of the size of how many employees they have, it's in terms of the size of how many websites they have and how many web pages they have to reflect that. And obviously that snowballs over time. They then earn backlinks from other reputable companies. They are very much active in the advocacy. So again, it goes back to there are over 300 factors in the algorithm. So it's one of the contributing factors for sure, but there's a lot of contributing factors in that one. Cool. So I think that's all the questions now. I did mention that we will follow up after with some resources for you. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up to that we'll send you out a link for if you want to sign up to that. And it covers everything from SEO to content strategy to digital marketing, social media, and anything that you might be interested in. And you can sign up for different niches as well. So you can sign up if you're financial services, you can sign up if you're energy and utilities, and you'll get content that's curated for your sector. And yeah, thank you very much everyone for attending and for staying and for your questions, and we will follow up with you afterwards.